Hey, Mario, thank you for jumping in.
Hey, sure. Thanks for inviting.
So, how are the tests going? Like, were you able to dive deep into some Cypress tests in Meshery?
Not yet, but I think I'll start. Um, I think just curious. So the what you shared in the thread is that that's separate from the other area of interest for testing, right? I think that it was about the patterns, so that's a different
Yep,
area, correct? Ah, okay,
yep,
got it. Okay, yeah, I'll take a look on both and try to make some progress.
yep. Sounds good. Sounds good.
Sure.
So, Lee and Aditya has just joined. So, we were just talking about some of the tests defined in the Meshery test plan and how Mario can help us try out some tests and like help us we probably automate them and uh, let us know if there are any bugs.
Yeah, Mario, I'll belabor the point by saying it's a big old need. Like it's really important for with every release as we get to a 1.0. Yeah, and the more code that we bring in, like the more anxiety I have as I hover my mouse button over the merge, the PR merge thing. And I look to the green check marks like, okay, good. But then, it's a little bit deceiving because, well, yeah, the user preferences test, it passed, which doesn't really mean, which is like not important as
Hmm.
opposed to
So it's giving a false sense of security because the coverage of the integration and end-to-end tests, it's not getting bigger with
yeah.
every commit. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, one of the things that's a little bit unnerving, I mean, I'll belabor the point by just saying it's a little bit unnerving as we go to fix some security vulnerabilities that are known inside of Meshery dependencies. We'll go over or every time that we accept in a new dependency, like an upgraded dependency, it's like, yeah, those occasionally break, or like there are breaks. And the problem is you get, you'll get like 10, 15, 20 of them at a time and going through and manually building and checking and et cetera. So yeah, there are a number of willing contributors in the community to follow your lead with respect to like having an understanding as to what Cypress is and where to go. And they don't need to be Cypress experts. They don't need to, like, we don't want to propagate a bunch of, I'll use that word fragile again, like fragile test cases that but so long as they're adhering to what you know to be best practices, yeah, and we can I guess what I'm trying, the message I'm trying to deliver is like, hey, we're clearly, myself and others are stoked that you're here. And so as we make asks of you, the intention isn't to saddle your shoulders with more stress and responsibility you want, but rather to empower you to do so, to have others kind of follow suit. And actually, one thing that I had mentioned before that I didn't follow through on, in part because I wasn't quite sure of this, which is the Cypress, the Cypress.io account that you have today. Is there a particular email address or username or that we can associate to, and then see if we can add you to the team?
Maybe my you mean like a Cypress account? Yeah, I haven't used the dashboard itself.
Okay, yeah. Well,
I have experience, I have like gone over all the Cypress docs, so I have
yeah.
knowledge of what's the features included. But if you want, I can create a Cypress account, or should I just share an email with you and
Yeah, and probably an email will.
okay, yeah, that maybe that's better.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I just didn't want to have you roll your eyes as we sent you like, your
Like a
fifth.
bunch of
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the email.
Nice. Got it. All right. All right, Nibendu, sorry, just back to you.
That was actually the first thing we had to discuss on this call. So like I also would like to point out that we have a column here with to say whether the tests are automated or not. So like our ideal goal here is to like have all of these tests automated. Like that might be pretty obvious, but like Mario, like when you work through this, like you can use this spreadsheet to keep track of things like which things have you automated and which you haven't. All right.
Sure, thanks.
All right. So the next topic is reusing the GitHub actions for E2E testing. So uh, Rudraksh, do you want to start this off or should I just?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so for some context, we have an action in a workflow in the Meshery repo that basically uses our GitHub actions. So we have the Meshery SMP GitHub action, and we also have the SMI conformance GitHub action. We also have one GitHub action that is being built, which wraps around Meshery patterns. So these tests use this action to run a couple of workflows across multiple Kubernetes version and multiple environments, that is deploying Meshery on Docker and deploying Meshery on Kubernetes. So I think I have mentioned in a call or somewhere like that, like this action does not actually check uh, does not actually deploy an application and run performance test on that application endpoint. So I just updated the Meshery SMP GitHub action. So there must be, it's actually merged. So so what this does is uh, it updates the action to account for to actually deploy service meshes, onboard applications on the service meshes, and run a couple of workflows. So basically that's end-to-end functionality. So we might uh, use this updated action in the workflows as well. And one thing that we need to do is finish off the service mesh patterns action and use the patterns action in the end-to-end workflow as well. So what the pattern action can do is actually maybe deploy a service mesh or maybe onboard a service mesh, onboard an application onto a service mesh and configure it. So basically that will cover a lot of areas in Meshery CTL as well as Meshery server. So that is still yet to be done. So if Sayantan is on the call, I guess he's not. So we need to follow up with Sayantan to get to complete the action quickly and uh, like use it in these places. Rudraksh, anything else to add?
I guess the action, the workflow was showing on Meshery repository. It's not running, so we will need to put the appropriate secret that is the infinite token for this as well. So since you have, I mean, you can see the secrets. So just a reminder to update the secrets with the token as well.
Sure, I will do that.
Yeah.
So like I can maybe show the action. Uh, so which uh, I actually have the action running on a repo of mine. Maybe you can take a look. So basically, you can run this action within, like, you can run this action manually, or you can run these actions. These are also scheduled to run daily. We can change that to like whenever we want. So, and you can like just let me just try to show you. So basically we run tests across multiple load generators, multiple service meshes, and multiple configuration files. So let's say if we have two different tests defined in two different configuration files. Let's say they are a load test and a soak test. Maybe we can cycle through all the possible combination of load generator, service meshes, and the test defined, and this will actually run in a scheduled function. So currently I have three service meshes and two load generators, and all of these tests are being run. We can actually also have multiple test configuration files, and this will be run as well. Yep, that's pretty much it. Any comments on the action?
Are those, I wasn't, apologies if you answered this already, but are those jobs running concurrently or sequentially? I guess concurrently.
Concurrently, yeah.
Nice. And right now it's, illuminative that you're listing the mesh and the load generator in the parentheses. That's nice. Do we, did you, okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I totally missed this. You did just invoke those manually. Okay, great. But we've yet to include Nighthawk in these tests.
Yeah, that's we can include it, like we can just add it to the, yeah, that
Got you, cool.
build
Any
metrics.
known issues with
Nighthawk.
yeah. I mean, there are known issues, but I mean, or why didn't we include Nighthawk? Like, is there an immediate blocker, or you just didn't get to it yet?
No, I actually don't know why, because like Nighthawk, I thought like Nighthawk wasn't ready, so maybe that's why. But like we can just add in the other load generator here, and it should work.
Cool.
And we actually, so we will have a separate account to run the scheduled benchmarks, and this account will be a special account, and it will have infinite token. And I also try to name the tests such that it is traceable, so uh, we can trace back to what uh, like what all configuration we did, and even the actual configuration file name that we used. So that is also something that makes it pretty easy to navigate through in the Meshery UI, and probably try look at those results.
I have one more thing to say. Let me be quiet for a minute in case other people have questions.
What's the difference between a load test and a soak test?
Oh yeah.
No,
Sorry, I just saw the YAML workflow.
yep.
It's on
So
the
in the like currently both of these are same, but like I added these two workflows to point out that like we can have multiple configuration files, and define tests differently. So like in performance testing terms, like a soak test is of like is a test run that is for a longer period of time. So
Okay,
so that those
that's
are
right.
basically like different ways you can measure like benchmark performance of a
Mhm,
particular workload.
mhm. Okay, got it.
So
Thanks.
yeah, so Lee or like what we need here is like we need to define some actual tests that needs to be run. So these are just sample tests. So basically we need to rewrite what this is going to be. So I was trying to get Sungun involved here so he can look at into this and like
One thing that, yeah, actually, like, maybe this is debatable, the definition and distinction between a generic load test and a SOAP test specifically. But I'll suggest that there's a difference here. And as I do, it raises the question as to whether or not Nighthawk is capable of a SOAP test. And if it is, then whether or not we need to be exposing that type of, exposing support for it in SMP in this. So briefly, and people can disagree, like I don't think that these are necessarily industry hardened terms, but a load test being mostly what you generally think of, which is like, hey, you've got some business requirement that says, you want to have a certain performance characteristics of a given service. And so you ramp up load on it, you're watching it, you're looking at it, and over whatever amount of time you want to, you say, yeah, it looks good, or it doesn't. But that was the load test. And then the SOAP test is a bit more like, hey, let's run this for an extended period, which is one difference. And the second difference is let's go ahead and load it up at the, like the same load that we would have done in like a load test, but let's also include some variability. Like let's run it for an extended period, have it hammer on it for a bit, maybe spike, but then, kind of come back down, do some other stuff, spike and like, sort of, yeah,
Variation.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so there's a blog post out there on this that covers it a bit, but then the question becomes, or what I start to acknowledge is that in SMP, we don't have variability over time as a configurable item. So there's an open question then as to whether or not Nighthawk supports variability. I'll follow up on that, I'll ask.
yes, thank you. Like
Cool. I have a question about the testing of the performance management, but I can wait until like there's no more topics.
oh yeah.
I think we'll have time if you want to.
Yeah,
Okay, so should I go ahead?
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, sure. So Navendu shared that in the Meshery test plan, so it's desired like a high priority is the performance management dashboard, right? So the test is in the spreadsheet. It's A167. Is this correct? Is that the one you were talking about, Navendu? A167. Yep, that's the one you were referring to, right?
Yep, these set of
Oh,
tests
okay, okay, all of them. Okay, got it. So it's A67 through
through 75.
75.
But like there may be some
There's
scenarios that might not have been defined in this test
Mhm, of
scenarios.
course.
So
Yeah, this is not like extensive. I understand. That's right.
yep.
Okay,
Mm,
good.
yeah.
Good. So the first question about running a performance test, maybe I'll do my homework and I'll go over the documentation to get a better idea of the functionality. But right out of the bat, is there any setup required in order to run that test? Like just trying to think like from what we have in the workflows. Like there's some end-to-end tests going on like already with Cypress. So is there an additional steps we would need to script in order to get the conditions ready for the test to run?
Uh, Other than like having Meshery deployed, having like we don't necessarily need to have a Kubernetes cluster, but like having Meshery deployed either in Docker or Kubernetes, that should be enough. We can then hit any endpoint, like even public endpoints, if Meshery has access to that public endpoint. So other than that, I don't think
Mhm.
there needs to be configuration.
Like, but the first test is run a performance test. So then there is somewhere in the UI where that would be where a user would run a performance test, right? But what would it test like? Uh, I'm thinking there should be some additional configuration for that, right? Or would it do a performance test against Meshery itself? Maybe that's something I'm missing.
We can run tests. So
Mhm.
like there is this configuration. So basically
Mhm.
we can paste in a URL that need where will have a workload and where we can uh, run tests against. Uh, so like other than that, like there isn't much configuration.
So, Rudraksh, do you want to augment that answer?
Um, I got lost.
Any,
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I think you can, yeah, you'll be able to ultimately answer your own question, I think, Mario.
Okay. So then once it's installed, like, do you have the end-to-end workflow? Like, I mean the GitHub Actions workflow. Just trying to understand, like, if we are a Cypress test in the end-to-end folder, like what would the performance test run against? Like I was trying to understand like how yeah, what's being tested at that moment, right? Or where would be add any configuration? But you say it's not needed. But then again, so the workflow would install all the Meshery components, right, and services. But then again, what would it test? Is there at that point? Is there anything deployed that it would do performance testing against? Maybe I just need to
So
see it in action.
basically, the uh, workflow that Navindu showed some moments ago, it deploys a sample application and then tests its endpoint using Meshery by generating load. So we're trying to test the capabilities of Meshery here and areas.
Oh, okay. Sorry. The confusion is that I'm talking about Cypress end-to-end tests. Maybe I wasn't clear.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's something like Navendu, like he was asking me about, like functional end-to-end tests with Cypress. So this would be like on a different workflow, right?
Yes, I think that will, because the ones that Navindu was showing are more about Meshery CTL, but I
Yeah,
guess with
of course.
Cypress, they'll be with UI. And
Mhm.
yeah, so we'll need to like, I, I, I think you know Cypress better than me.
Like me? You mean me? Oh, okay. Yeah, but I'm just asking like where can I go over, like where are those workflows? Like I'm assuming it's one of these, but it's not obvious for me. Okay, maybe CI. I'll take a look. Just a sec.
I'm hoping the SMP maintainer on the call can explain it. All right, guys. All right. So Navendu and Rudraksh, you guys have to listen to this answer so you guys can answer it yourselves, which is look, yeah, I mean, the Cypress testing could invoke or could benefit from a GitHub action, or maybe just in terms of understanding what's going on, sure. But actually the point of running the Cypress test, in addition to running the SMP GitHub action that Navendu just kicked off, is that they will do somewhat of duplicative coverage, which is good. So in the ongoing GitHub actions, they're going to invoke some tests under some certain constraints, and like hopefully like any number of tests under different versions of like arguably we could go to Cypress, focus just on Cypress and get all the same stuff that we otherwise got out of the GitHub action. Because Cypress is a higher level and it starts from a higher starting point, which is the Meshery UI as the client, whereas the GitHub action starts from Meshery CTL as the client. And so they're both hitting it from two different vectors. And so it's good. This one helps people pipeline and it's convenient, and we're going to pump out hopefully a bunch of reports and data, and that's great and good, and etc. Over here in Cypress UI, we're going to test that all of our JavaScript is happening, the login is going on, there's like a basic set of Cypress setup that's going to be reused across, or I'm assuming, I'm a Cypress ignoramus, but I'm assuming like you develop a couple of reusable functions or reusable tests, like you perform this test, and then if that's successful, you build off of it. And so it's like the login test, and did that work? Yes, okay. You go to the next one, which is then. And so to what Mario is asking is like, okay, great, hey, I'm ready to chow down on this first kind of the highest priority item, which is this performance management area is the deepest area that Meshery has, and it's as such it's critical. Like a lot of people come in to use Meshery to run these tests, and so great, where do we get started? And as we get started, what configuration is needed? And there's a couple easy answers, and there's a couple that kind of get into it a little bit more. So one of the easy answers is more or less where I think Mario was about to land, which is, okay, so from within Cypress, the pseudocode for one of the first tests to write is, well, and I guess like, actually now that I think of it, now that I think of it, Cypress, I forgot, Cypress runs inside of a GitHub workflow as well. So it can benefit, like the tests that Cypress run alongside, those initial set of tests can be some infrastructure setup, a local Kubernetes instance with a pre-deployed Meshery CTL, and then whatever that repetitive pattern is, then we'll get into this Cypress area, which basically expects, okay, there's a running Kubernetes and there's a running Meshery. Now it's time to perform the login test, which I think we have, or whatever, like, great. Okay, so then the starting point for these next performance management tests are you have all that infrastructure, you have just a vanilla Kubernetes with Meshery sitting there, and you're logged in. Now there's no service mesh and there's no workloads. So we do ultimately want to deploy a service mesh and deploy a workload and hammer on that workload, generate some load, look at the outcome, like there's a lot of steps. But the initial one that we can be successful with is if you've deployed Meshery and you're signed in, you can just go ahead and execute a performance test against a third-party URL like meshery.io, which is in part what Mario was asking. It's like, hey, what should I run the tests against, for how long and how intensely? And in this case, for Cypress, the difference will be, well, for a very short amount of time and not very intensely at all. Like the point is just, is it functional? The point isn't how quickly is GitHub serving up meshery.io.
Yeah, we'll be adding like a smoke test at the UI level so that Cypress can basically exercise a real browser, right? And then just point to Meshery UI instance, and then, you know, just go do some clicks, and then like we have this spreadsheet. So it says we should run a performance test, navigate to performance, click on run test, and the expected outcome is run performance test based on the specified configuration with the specified load generator. Then of course we have like which are the load generators. Not that familiar with them, but I know like they're Fortio,
Right.
WRK2, and Nighthawk. But the question would be like
Yep. Totally.
like what is like what do we need prepared
Yep.
in that workflow, or maybe it's just some something we can invoke
Yeah. There's a
from.
couple of answers here. One is that okay, so there's I don't know that we want to have tests that, like, yes, it would be great if we have tests that cover all of these permutations, but as we go through it, and the more comfortable all of us get, the more opinionated we will be about just how many tests are needed versus one test covering 5 other potential individual tests. And so one of those things is that you can go into Meshery fresh as without using a remote provider. So without signing in, you're just basically an anonymous user. You're using Meshery just as a generic tool. Meshery doesn't know who you are, doesn't save any of your data. And so you can go in and there would be no pre-configured performance profiles that you could just invoke an operational run a test of, which means that, okay, that's really easy to sign in because you're technically not signing in. You just go in as no user. Now the Cypress test would need to supply its own configuration. So it would need to say, here's the endpoint I want to hit, which, yeah, you know, in this case, it's okay if it were to hit itself or hit something locally, like, or if it sends something out remote, like, you know, either way, I don't think whichever one is most reliable, so that we're not getting false negatives on the fact that the GitHub runner tried to send some packets out to the internet, but like for whatever reason, they didn't make it back. And so the test fails, even though it wasn't a Meshery code issue, it was just an environment issue for the workflow. So choosing like localhost something is probably a good idea. And then, yeah, the other parameters, there are system defaults there's actually only one parameter that the user must specify. And that is, the URL. Yep.
Okay, good.
We might or might not want to specify that the duration is, the default is 30 seconds. Maybe that's okay, but you can set it to something else. The rest you could leave, because even if it's, I mean, you could set the concurrency to 1 and the queries per second to 1, and we can give, you know, we can, I think actually the point is that you probably would set a value or two, because that's part of flexing the UI, you know, part of.
Try to enable all the switches as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
So that we exercise more code in a, no.
And to your point, like I love the fact that you're using the term smoke test, which is, you know, entirely appropriate for the thing that we're just, you know, we're discussing right here. That, like, yeah, over time these smoke tests become part of a larger regression
of course
set.
Safety net.
Yeah, which then is to say, like, well, hey, if this is just a smoke test to verify that performance tests work, like maybe we don't need to supply it anything other than the default values. But in the regression test, let's give it a couple of variations, a negative value, and, you know, stuff like this.
Of course.
And I think, like, so it should, I don't know, the verification that the test ran successfully and that Cypress, you know, the assertion that we would give to Cypress would be, I'm not sure, it's an asynchronous invocation, because you might have a 10-hour-long test. And so we don't force users to sit there and wait for the synchronous message to come back and say, here are your results. So as you familiarize more with Meshery, and as you bring some Cypress knowledge to bear, you'll probably have an opinion about.
Yeah, because there is some polling, right? There's some polling mechanism on the front end.
Or
Okay.
well, in Meshery UI, there isn't. It's really.
So,
I
so
mean,
how do the results get rendered? Like, how does the front end know
they get pushed.
it
back.
should mutate?
They get pushed back over a.
Okay, like Socket.io?
Yeah.
No.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so.
But that is the library, right? Right, Socket.io. That's
Yeah,
the
that
one you're
isn't
using.
the.
Okay.
Yeah, that is not the one that we're using, but that is the
That's
same
not
exact
similar.
concept.
Okay,
Yeah.
Sockets.
The one that we're using is GraphQL.
Web. Oh, okay, got it.
And it has a subscription.
So then there's what is it, like a connection that is what is it, stay alive, or can't remember the term, but then it's just waiting for our message back.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just a perpetually open socket that events are pushed to. So in this case, it's a GraphQL subscription. So you're right that like the UI that is a client then of Meshery server, and the UI, like this JavaScript library is just sort of sitting there saying, server, I'm subscribed to this topic and this socket, this topic. So, whenever you're ready, just push stuff over to me and I'll just, show it to the user.
Okay,
and,
cool.
And so,
yeah, I you know what, I think this is a good discussion, and I found like the guides. Thanks for sharing that. Like, there's a guide for performance management. So I'll try to, get a local instance running, and try to come up with like a really basic test that will help us fly off here, right? Like just a starter, then we can go from there, right?
yeah, Mario, it should be the case that when the performance test is submitted, when the run test button is clicked, that there should be an acknowledgement back from Meshery server to the UI saying, thank you, and here's the name of your performance test, which might be a bit of gobbledygook. Like, it's just sort of here's the unique identifier for the performance test that you just invoked. And so with that, it might be that you wait 45 seconds or whatever, and then request the results of that. So yeah.
Yeah, there should be some kind of spanner, or maybe at least some response received that we can have Cypress wait for, like, instead of a specified amount of time, just to make it resilient.
Right. Yeah.
Avoid failures. But yeah.
And then, yeah, good. And then, like, just as a foreshadowing, that, okay, hey, another one test is to log into Meshery Cloud. We would have a robot account or a service account that can do that as part of the Cypress tests. And then that account ongoing, it has a couple of pre-existing performance profiles, like the quick test or whatever it's called. And so in that instance, you wouldn't have to, the Cypress test doesn't have to supply the configuration as much as it just has to identify
select the profile.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Sure. Yeah, there could be separate tests, one for actually running the profile. We could do what you just said, and another one just to try to add a profile. They don't have to be together, right? As long as we like go over both workflows. Just to catch any issues in saving a profile, editing a profile. Basic.
Yeah, totally.
Stuff.
I mean, yeah, the runtime is free for them, or we're not exceeding our
limit.
GitHub. Yeah. So
cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Thanks a lot, everyone. I'll take a look. Yeah. Sorry. Anything else?
No, I was just going to kind of tie it back to the fact that when we're looking at the GitHub service mesh performance action that Navendu was kind of starting the call with, the YAML config inside of here for a soak test, like this YAML config should be verbatim. Like if you go into, if you sign into Meshery UI, you go create a performance profile. If you run a test, yeah, actually, if you don't mind, if you go to a test that you've already run, or just run anything quick. And if you go to the performance management UI, so there is like a slight issue in terms of our GraphQL subscription here. Like it should have gone to result 1. And I think if you refresh the screen, it will say result 1. But we're not flushing as we necessarily should. So what had just happened was, right, okay, wait, yeah, okay, yeah. Navendu knows where I was going. So there's 2 things to show you. So one is that the JSON that just downloaded, it's a copy of the performance profile, and it will also be a copy of the test results for that specific invocation. So the YAML that we see inside of the GitHub action, that's like extraordinary. It's representative of exactly what you're typing into the UI. It's the same fields. The reason that we can guarantee that it's the same fields, well, there's a couple of reasons, but largely because those fields are based on the service mesh performance specification. And so over here, it's in YAML. When we downloaded it from the UI, just then when he downloaded from the UI, it was going to be in JSON, but same thing, same fields, because it's just based on the protobuf file.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Avi or Rudraksh might take the combination of the 2 of you. The download that Navendu just did, that JSON wouldn't open. So there's malformed JSON happening somewhere. Can you open that with just like a text editor?
Oh, it didn't download.
Oh, it didn't
Failed
It's
server
failing.
code. Yeah.
Maybe could you open your console in the browser, please? So okay. Can you try again? Let's see the request. Just download. Should fail again. What about you? So what's in your console? Is there any error? No, right? What about the network? There's some logging there. Okay, let's see the network. So there's no request going on. Let's try again. Are you recording? Click on the record, like I mean on the network. There's this. Oh, it's in progress, right? Sorry. Okay, I was expecting some network activity there.
Yeah.
I guess it's something with the local provider, because I tried the same thing with the remote and it's working for me. I mean, the YAML gets downloaded. So,
I mean the JSON, right?
yeah.
We have a couple of other items to discuss since we are 15 minutes. We only have 15 minutes left. Maybe we can get to that topics. Rudraksha, do you want to go ahead with this?
Yeah, so I can share my screen and explain the problem.
Yep, sure.
So basically the thing is that Meshery CTL now installs using Helm charts, and the Helm chart manifest doesn't have this label. And let me just close this. Right now in Meshery server, we fetch this from that label. So yes, there is space for improvement, and this one is fetched from the containers tag itself. I don't know if we should do it here. And other than that, I'll probably need to catch up with Utkarsh on how can mesh sync send this version. So yep, that's basically it.
Yeah. Sorry, were you saying you might need to collaborate with Utkarsh?
Yep.
Okay. And so to your knowledge, if you query I don't know, I don't even know if you can, are you able to, does MeshSync expose a API / system / version?
Nope.
Okay.
I'm not sure as in how does the expose mechanism of mesh sync works right now, so I can't make any comments.
Okay, gotcha. I don't think it does actually, now that I say it, like, yep, makes sense. All right. I do think that the NATS port is, oh yeah. The NATS subscription port is exposed, but that may not be serving MeshKit's API system version. So, okay. All right, some investigation needed then. Yeah, good. This is just like it, it's a small item, important to the extent that, you know, we're trying to troubleshoot things.
Yep.
Other items for the release readiness. I think like we have a couple of more other things from Rudraksh, like spec, one item is like deployment of operators, and the other one was seed content for Meshery Cloud. So I guess these are still in progress and not ready to be reviewed or worked upon, but I guess only the Helm in Meshery server is pending, right? Like that is critical for the release, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, on the last call, we have decided to like, it's fine, we can still go without it. The only problem would be like only local users would suffer if Meshery operator still uses manifest. So I guess there's no urgent need for that PR, and yeah, that's it. I mean, we don't want to write more go to do stuff that people should actually take care of and then end up in a position where we have more bugs because we were being over smart. So yeah, that's for Meshery operator. And seed content, I haven't reached to that. There have been no updates to that design since the last time we met. So yeah.
Right, yeah. So I don't think we can speak to the seed content thing just yet. But the Helm versus manifest, so Rudraksh, I missed quite what you said. Are we, so that there's an update in that PR on Meshery CTL for when you invoke system stop. And I think what's going on there is that Darren would have included the removal of what are otherwise orphaned artifacts. That was the conversation, the last conversation that he and I had. And so I'm assuming that that's what that's about. And I think you and I had spoken about that some. And so that's a great PR for you to review.
Okay.
Other items, things that come immediately in mind that might be blocking the release, that we need to take care of soon. So I guess we have a couple of release blocks pending. I'm not mentioning about the main release block, but the release block for particular features that we are planning to add in this release. So we need to actively try to get these written down. So other items.
Yeah, I forgot there was one other item. Oh yeah, there's one other item I'd like to make sure that you all are at least aware of. There might be some new contributors that come, or you might meet some that want to do this. This would be ideal. Is of the test case, the service mesh performance tests that are now being scheduled through that action. It's not because of this. This has always been a goal, but because we're going to have so many tests coming through and we're going to begin to analyze them, that we're desirous of having a dashboard or I guess dashboard is the right thing, on smp-spec.io. It should ultimately be publishing these results and saying, for this service mesh on this version, here was its response time under the SOAP test or under the whatever. And we need to have a dashboard, a public facing dashboard that people can just come refer to and compare and contrast. And so for the Avis of the world, like this is relatively straightforward to do. Based on the exposure of those metrics from Meshery Cloud. Cool. So Avi, you specifically, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or okay, and you don't need context?
Definitely need some.
Okay, yeah, it's okay. Like I mean, like twice on this call, I wasn't listening to something someone said to me, and then they had to repeat it, and so it's okay. Like, Navendu, can you go to meshery.io/SMI? So Meshery runs conformance tests for these service meshes, and it does it with different test assertions on using different versions and that kind of a thing. And we publish the results. Like, these results are run and they're sent back to Meshery Cloud. Meshery Cloud exposes the results. And then here the Meshery.io has some JavaScript that just grabs that JSON and shows the world a dashboard of what service meshes are conformant with SMI. In a similar way, we need an SMP dashboard that shows the world the performance of different service meshes under different configurations. And so we can very quickly expose that performance data from those scheduled tests that we were just looking at earlier on the call. So very quickly, we can toss up a table that grabs some JSON and shows people who's fastest.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Nice. Nice. So more details later, like it isn't ready. We don't have the backend infrastructure and things, but just, yeah.
Yeah, so basically I have to look to SMI interface and how the dashboard is, like how the data is shown here as a dashboard, right? And then do the same for SMP. Like, yeah, if there is a need of optimization with designs, then definitely, yeah.
Yeah, same concept. Or I mean, just like the high level concept is the same. The particulars will be that on the service mesh performance dashboard, it won't be a yes or a no. It won't be a green or a red. It will be a latency, like a latency metric. It'll be actual metrics. And so we might choose to chart those, or we might choose to just show the metric number. So cool. Anyway, I'll give you an example of what one looks like. Other than this. Great.
So basically, it needs backend also, right? So yeah, the data is maybe coming, but does it needs different type of data format that
Yep. There is no backend for it right now. Other than Navendu, if you navigate to the main Meshery page, underneath the splash, like under where SMP, it says 5,096 performance tests run. That is real time. That number is actually pulled from Meshery Cloud whenever someone loads this page. And so if you run a performance test right now, the count will go up. So there is some of the data, it's just a single number that's exposed. And what we need to do is expose the rest. And so, yeah, the backend isn't there. I'm just, so now that you have full context for what we're going to try to do, later when we talk about it, you'll know what the goal is.
Yeah, definitely.
Nice. Can you do me a favor, Abhi, would you please open up an issue on the SMP repo that just says, public dashboard of performance test results?
Okay. I'm doing.
Thank you. Nice. And then, okay, at risk of going over time, Adina, really quick, almost last chance, Adina, I don't know, is, so do you, any questions anything that still doesn't make sense about that Meshery CTL patterns GitHub action, the goal?
I understood the goal.
Okay.
That one I understood now, today.
Gotcha.
Today, no.
Sure.
Yeah, so I don't know from where to start now. So I understand where I need to go, but not from where to start.
Yeah. There is, yeah, yeah, I'm stuck.
Anyhow, you can leave it to someone else. It's not
okay.
necessarily
Okay.
but to me.
Yeah, that might be, that might be.
It might be easier and faster ramp up. I'm always like this. I just know I need to know from where and where, like the beginning and the end, and then I can make something. But I cannot work without the context.
Yeah.
I can work without knowledge, but not without context. I don't know how to say it, but yeah. But
yeah, makes sense.
Get others involved. It's okay.
Okay, cool. As they go forth, this would be a great one for you to watch and maybe add reviews on as they do it, because then context will come as they go. That's good.
Yep.
Good.
So you also need like small steps even until to go to the goal. I understand that also. But still I need to place a context, even if it's a fake context. I still need to have a sort of a road.
Totally. All right. Okay. Navindu, anything else on the call?
Nope, that's pretty much it for today. So we'll meet back in 2 weeks, hopefully with Meshery V06 released and the beta programs being active. So I'll see you guys then. Bye.
Thanks, Navindu.
Thanks, you all.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Dean. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.